Yeah, I'm thinking absolutely the same thing you're thinking about right now. What was that call at 125? What happened in the end of the Braden Davis-Vinny Kilkeary match? You rewatch the replay, you watch it live, you watch the replay, you're like, in what world? I mean, we've all, pretty much if you're watching this video, you probably watched, 10,000 takedowns in your life. So you have a pretty good idea what it is. That's what makes wrestling really cool, is like pretty much all the fans have a pretty deep knowledge of what's happening. And this may be the one thing that united wrestling fans for once. This call, this Braden Davis-Vinny Kilkeary takedown call. And I'm going to get into the entire Penn State-Ohio State duel because it was fantastic. And there's a lot of interesting things that happened and storylines coming out of this. But starting at 125, go to the end. Braden Davis is in the lead. He's up, I think, 4-2. Kilkeary gets double unders. He hits a back arch. They have a little scramble on the mat. Kilkeary comes out on top, and he's kind of like all the way behind, kind of like backside. And Braden Davis' belly's pointed towards the mat, and he's reaching back. And then as Kilkeary is in takedown criteria for a little bit, Davis rolls underneath, rolls to his back, and Kilkeary kind of circles around afterwards, and he puts the half on. I'm sure you've probably seen the clip. If you haven't, it's up pretty much everywhere. But you watch that and you think, well, what is even the explanation that could be given that's not a takedown? Because, and what is the most, I think, concerning thing out of this is not just that, okay, they messed up a call in a match in a duel. It's the overall trend that seems to be seeping into a lot of wrestling matches, which is the interpretation of reaction time seems to have changed. And there has been no changes, there have been no rule changes in regards to reaction time. There have been some takedown clarifications, but the definition of reaction time is unchanged yet. We've seen it change. We've seen a prolonged amount of time allowed before these officials are giving a takedown. Now this, even with that, this is an extreme circumstance in my opinion. I honestly don't know what the call could be, but if you end up in a takedown kind of criteria where if like you snapped a picture and you looked at it and you said, okay, hey, this is a takedown, this looks like a takedown. Of course, we know it can't come down to that instant, but if you're in that criteria and then you roll to your back, that shouldn't like reset the reaction time thing. It's like you're in takedown criteria, now you're on your back. And Kilkeary's like almost got a half Nelson, and so get rid of it. So I think it's it's something where the officials got to get on a call. They do these things where they kind of send out these points of emphasis. This is the number one point of emphasis, is you have to clarify reaction time. And in my opinion, you got to tighten it up. You can't have it go on 1, 2, 3 seconds. A guy's getting taken down, a guy's on his back, and it reminded me of like JiuJitsu when a guy pulls guard and dives under. Like, it's like, what? Didn't even look like wrestling. That would be in what world is rolling to your back a good defense from a takedown? I don't know. Obviously there's leg passes and things like that, but I don't think that's what we were seeing here. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I think that call was messed up. And man, this is the one time I saw Penn State fans and Ohio State actually were agreed. So many of these mentions, I couldn't believe Penn State fan here. I think that call was bad. Lifelong Penn State fan. I think they blew that. That was a surprising, but not surprising outcome, because I think this is a unique circumstance where a call was actually that bad. Now, officiating aside, there's another interesting thing here, which is Ohio State didn't use Brendan McCrone. They used Vinny Kilkeary, their true freshman. And it seemed like it's going to be McCrone all year long. They threw out Kilkeary. Maybe they think that's a better matchup. Maybe they are entertaining using him. I don't know what they're really thinking about with Kilkeary. If he gets that win, that's a big win. That can help seeding. That can help qualification, et cetera, et cetera. Now I don't know what you're left with. I think they probably still wind up going with McCrone, but a nice performance from Vinny Kilkeary, and Braden Davis avoids something that every other 125-pounder has faced, which is a defeat. And Braden Davis still undefeated at 125. But there's, I think, bigger stories out of this dual meet. Now, on the one hand, Penn State did what it's supposed to do. They won, and they won big. They won 24-9 was the final. And That said, Ohio State to me was the story in this dual meet. I really think that. I mean, I was talking about, this is a potential shutout match scenario. And we were kind of looking at like, they got to get 41 or they could get shut out here. Well, it didn't play out like that at all. Because at 133 pounds, Nick Bouzakis comes out, takedown against Aaron Nagao. And you can look at that 12-10 final and say, all right, yeah, kind of a close match. But really it was more about Bouzakis just kind of got a big lead and coasted to the end. Not an ideal way to finish, but you were never like, oh, Nick's about to lose this match. He kind of took it to him. And for Nagao, it's a couple of things. You could say, well, he's not, doing as good as last year. Well, did you look at last year, or did you just look at the last 2 weeks of last year? Because if you look at all of last year, you would know that Aaron Nagao was a guy that he took some losses. He got pinned by Braden Palmer last year at the Southern Scuffle. He had a loss to Chris Cannon. This guy wasn't, he wasn't the guy you saw at the end of the year all year long. So you can see that sometimes for wrestlers, they revert back to the mean. Water always returns to its level, and it could be a little bit of that with Nagao. Also, Penn State's got one of the lower match counts in the country, and these guys have not wrestled unless some of the guys have been hitting a lot of opens, but if they haven't, the match counts are kind of low, so they haven't been exposed to that many ranked matchups. So, I think it's a little bit about Bouzakis is looking really good. He's putting together a pretty solid season. He's been up and down, but he's looking good, and I think it's a little bit about Nagao, maybe not regressing overall, but you have your ebbs and flows and you return back to the mean. I think it could be a little bit of that with Nagao. Bo Barlet versus Jesse Mendez played out almost exactly how you would predict it would if you thought Bo Barlet was going to win this match. Not a lot of attacks, not a lot of attempts. The attempts are more or less stymied at all after all attacks. And this one goes to overtime, and you'd say, hey, if this goes to overtime, edge Bo Barlet. He just wins these kind of matches. And Mendez, he's in deep on a shot, and Bo does what he does. He locks around the crotch, gets a counter takedown, countering the shot of Mendez for a neutral danger zone. He had him on his back, I thought, a while. It went to review, but I actually thought this wasn't all that controversial. I thought it was clear neutral danger zone for Bo Barlet. So he wins that match and kind of maintains his standing. And now 141, what do you do now that Real Woods just got majored by Sergio Limley? So Bo Bartlett's going to go to number 1 in the country. I'm guessing. I'm not the ranker, but it just seems like what's going to happen here. So craziness at 141 with Bartlett beating Mendez and Woods going down in dominant fashion against Michigan's Sergio Limley. So craziness every single week here in NCAA wrestling. It's so fun. 49, Tyler Kasak. I think it's established now. He is going to be the guy for Penn State at 149. And, you lose Shane Van Ness, a title contender, someone you think could wrestle in the finals, potentially win it all. And you just replace him with a true freshman, Tyler Kasak, who's just been unbelievable. And here he takes out Dylan D'Amelio, an All-American a year ago. Kind of one-sided match. Dylan had a couple good counters to some of Kasak's attacks, but wasn't able to get it going. 2 takedowns to none advantage, and Kasak, he cuts him late, pushing for a major, couldn't get it, but I thought that was a pretty strong signal sent by Kasak and the Penn State bench. Hey, let him up. Let's try to push for more. Kind of like, hey, if you're the starter for Penn State, you're pushing for bonus, and Kasak's going to fit in really well there for Penn State. 57, not a ton to talk about there. Haynes rolled, major decision over a tough Wilcox. Mitchell Messenbrink, all over Bryce Hepner's legs at 165, but Hepner had some nice moments here, and maybe a little cause for not concern, but just awareness here. Mitchell Messenbrink had a hard time getting away from Bryce Hepner. He was able to get some reversals, but Bryce Hepner finished the match on top. It was a regular decision for Mitchell Messenbrink, something that he hasn't had too many of this year. But overall, Mitchell looked great on his feet, but the top wrestling, particularly the leg riding of Hepner, seemed to at least slow Mitchell down a tad. And now these next 2 matches are the big ones for Ohio State if you want to get even more excited about their performance, because they had 2 losses where you can be pretty fired up. Braden Davis was undefeated. Vinny Kilkeary all but, and maybe, depending who you ask, did beat Braden Davis. And then here at 174, you have the soon-to-be, I'll say, 4-time NCAA champion Carter Starachi, the pound-for-pound number 1 wrestler in America, a guy who has bonused every wrestler he's faced this year, including national champion Mekhi Lewis. And so you've got a true freshman in Rocco Welsh taking the mat, hostile crowd, rec hall, everyone knows how hard it is to wrestle there. And it starts off looking very positive for Carter Stach. Now, skipping to the end, Carter wins this match. But what's more interesting is, like, he was competitive. Rocco was competitive. And the match starts, takedown for Carter, and he's moving them all around, and Rocco's getting hit for stalling, and it seems like he's having a hard time just holding position for a little bit there. And then at some point later in the match, second or third period, the pendulum swings the other way. And it's Stach that's retreating a little bit. Stach has the lead. He's backing up. Stach won for stalling. And it ends up being just a decision win for Carter Stach off the one takedown. So an impressive showing for Rocco Welsh, who, you know, I say impressive. He's probably, he's probably thinking, man, I had 2 national champions on the ropes. You know, he had Shane Griffith, almost beat him, and got ridden out in the third, and then he couldn't get the takedown against Stach. He was never close to scoring. So on the ropes is probably a little hyperbole. But really competitive matches with 2 national champions, and he just comes up just short. But the future is really bright for Rocco Welsh is the main point I'm trying to make here. He looks really good. And then at 184, we said it, Ryder Rosi. This guy, he's got that wild card element. And Bernie Truax comes out, his beautiful left-handed single leg. He keeps hitting it. And it looks like, all right, this could be a major for Bernie. And then he ends up kind of underneath Rosi, kind of like an extended shot position, but short offense for Rosi. He's over-under is Rosi, and boom, takes him over, pins him, and that's something with Rosi we've seen over the years, back to his high school days. The guy's a pinner. The guy has a way of being down, but finding a way to pin his opponent. And I think he's the clear best option for Ohio State 184. He's just a true freshman, but I think he's got to be their 84-pounder moving forward. He teched Jaden Bullock last week. He just pinned Bernie Truax. I think Rogosi's going to be the guy for the Bucks moving forward. And then 97, Aaron Brooks does what he does. Greg Kirkfleet against Nick Feldman. You know, I thought Feldman had the right game plan, but even the best game plans, if you're outmatched, it's not going to work. And that's exactly what we saw with Greg Kirkfleet. He's just too much. I think he's one of the best in the world, right? I don't think he's just one of the best in the country. I think he's someone that can contend for world and Olympic teams for Team USA. I wouldn't count that out. So Feldman, no shame in losing to someone as great as Greg Kirkfleet. So at the end of the day, you're left thinking, nice evening for Ohio State relative to the expectations. And yet at the same time, a nice day is a 24-9 loss at the hands of what is one of the best teams we maybe have ever seen in Penn State this year.